It's funny how love, something that's supposed to feel like home, can start to feel like a stage. And the moment you realize you're the only one performing, that's the moment something inside you quietly begins to break. You find yourself rehearsing what to say, timing when to say it, and tiptoeing around silence that never used to exist. You're trying. You're really trying. But deep down, you're starting to wonder if you're just trying for both of you. It starts subtly. You plan the date nights, you check in first, you smooth over the awkward pauses, you send the long messages, you say let's talk, you offer reassurance even when you're the one feeling anxious. And at first, you don't question it, because that's what love does, right? It gives, it fights, it chooses grace. But grace without reciprocity, that's not love. That's quiet suffering dressed up as patience. Over time, the imbalance becomes undeniable. You're the one initiating all the difficult conversations. You're the one finding solutions to problems they don't even acknowledge. You become the emotional glue, and glue eventually dries up when it's spread too thin. You start overcompensating. You convince yourself maybe they're just bad at communication. Maybe they've been hurt before. Maybe you just love differently. So you make up for what they lack. You become the stable one, the emotionally mature one, the one who always understands, but who's understanding you. You begin to realize that every time you reach out, it feels more like reaching down, like you're dragging the relationship uphill while they remain comfortably still. And in doing so, you start sacrificing parts of yourself, your peace, your pride, your truth, all to maintain a connection that they won't even meet you halfway to protect. You don't notice it at first, but love begins to feel like labor, like effort without end. You overthink texts, analyze their moods, ask yourself if you're being too much for wanting a callback, a real answer, a simple effort. It's exhausting. And the hardest part, you can't even talk to them about it, because the moment you do, you're starting drama, you're too emotional, or worse, you're met with indifference. So instead of being heard, you quiet yourself. You choose peace over truth, and then you wonder why you feel so disconnected. It's disorienting, because they're not a bad person. They're not cruel. That's what makes it worse. They're nice. They do the bare minimum, just enough to keep you hoping. A good morning text here, and I miss you when you've grown distant. A compliment when they sense you pulling away. And you cling to those moments. You tell yourself they're trying, but deep down, you know you're the one holding it all together. You're the one filling in every silence, covering every crack, giving second, third, fourth chances to someone who doesn't even realize you're slowly unraveling. There's a kind of loneliness that hits different when you're lying next to someone who makes you feel alone. And the worst part isn't the neglect. It's how familiar it starts to feel. You get used to the crumbs. You begin to believe that the problem must be you, that maybe you are too much, that maybe you should be more patient, more chill, more understanding. But all that self-blame is just a survival response to avoid facing the truth. You're trying to fix something that only you are fighting for. And still you stay. You stay because you remember the version of them from the beginning. The one who laughed with you, leaned in, listened, seemed to care. You think maybe that version will come back if you just try a little harder. But they don't. And they won't. Because they're not losing anything while you keep giving everything. At some point, you realize that being the only one trying doesn't make you strong. It makes you tired. And it makes you forget your own worth. You forget that love isn't something you should have to convince someone to return. You forget that real connection flows. It doesn't have to be pushed, pulled, or forced. You forget that your needs aren't burdens. They're human and they deserve to be met without having to beg. So you stop trying, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. Because love should feel like a partnership, not a performance. And if you're the only one showing up, then it's not love. It's emotional abandonment with pretty packaging. And you deserve so much more than that. You're not giving up, you're waking up. The moment you stop overcompensating, something unsettling happens: silence. that loud, hollow kind of silence that reveals just how little effort was coming from the other side all along. When you stop texting first, the conversation dies. When you stop planning things, nothing happens. When you stop checking in, no one asks if you're okay. And that realization doesn't hit like a punch, it sinks, slow and deep. You finally see the truth for what it is. You weren't in a relationship. You were in a one-sided emotional contract with someone who never signed it back. And it hurts because your love was real, your care was consistent, your effort was honest, but you start noticing how their effort was only ever reactive, never proactive. They showed up when they sensed you slipping, not because they wanted to hold you, but because they wanted to keep you just enough to not lose you. And when you finally stop chasing, stop asking, stop reaching, you realize they were never trying. They were responding. There's a big difference. You don't just feel abandoned. You feel replaced, not by someone else necessarily, but by apathy. And it forces you to confront a brutal truth. If someone can let you go that easily, they never really held you that tightly to begin with. And in that moment of stillness, you begin to see your own value, not in how hard you tried to keep them, but in how much more you deserved than someone who never tried at all. There's a strange grief that comes with realizing you've been emotionally carrying something that was never mutual. You start to replay everything, every text you sent, every apology you made first, every time you made excuses for their distance. And you start to wonder, was I ever really seen, or was I just convenient? Because when you're the one doing all the work, love stops feeling like love, it starts feeling like labor. And the most confusing part is that they probably weren't cruel. They weren't overtly toxic. They just didn't show up for you in the way that mattered. They didn't fight for you. They didn't pour into you the way you poured into them. And you kept giving, hoping that one more effort, one more thoughtful message, one more chance would flip a switch in them. But it never did, because people don't change just because you try harder. They change when they want to. And when you keep trying for someone who won't meet you halfway, it doesn't make you stronger, it makes you emptier. Eventually you reach that quiet breaking point where the exhaustion outweighs the hope, where your heart is tired of hoping they'll finally get it. And in that moment, there's clarity. The only thing left to do is let go, not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself just a little more.